Years ago, a young boy vanished, and his family was led to believe he had simply run away. But the truth was far darker. James's own father had buried more than just the past, hoping no one would ever uncover it. Then Lexi, their loyal old dog, led them deep into the woods and straight to the secret he thought was gone forever. But just wait until you hear how this haunting mystery unraveled, and why, in the end, justice finally found its voice. When James and Emily Pierce moved into the old farmhouse tucked between the hills of rural Vermont, it felt like they were breathing for the first time in months. The home was far from perfect. The paint chipped, the floorboards creaked, but there was quiet, a kind of quiet that let you hear your own thoughts. After what they had been through, that alone was worth everything. Just a few months earlier, they had lost the child they were expecting. It happened late, suddenly. Friends stopped calling. Family didn't know what to say. The silence in their apartment grew louder each day until Emily suggested the move. "We need somewhere new," she had said. "Somewhere we can start over." Lexi came with them, a German shepherd with cloudy eyes and a silver muzzle. She had been Emily's shadow for nearly 10 years. Lexi had always been calm, watchful. She didn't need attention, just presence. But almost as soon as they settled into the farmhouse, something about Lexi changed. It began subtly. Each night after dinner, just as the last light faded behind the trees, Lexi would walk to the glass sliding door and sit, perfectly still, her ears tilted forward, her posture alert. And she would stare, not around, not toward movement or sound, but at one exact spot beyond the tree line, a place where the woods were thickest, just beyond the reach of the porch light. She wouldn't bark. She wouldn't whine. She would simply remain there, unwavering, for hours, watching. At first, James joked about it. "Maybe she's found herself a dear boyfriend," he laughed one night, trying to lighten the mood. Emily chuckled, but uneasily. Lexi didn't act like this in the city, and it wasn't just curiosity. It was focus, intent. They tried to distract her. Her favorite toy, treats, even keeping the curtains drawn. But by the fourth night, it became clear. Lexi wasn't reacting to anything visible. She was anticipating something, waiting for it. By the seventh night, she refused to eat unless she was near the door. Her meals sat untouched. She barely slept, just that same quiet vigil, hour after hour. James, exhausted and irritable from the sleepless nights and the growing tension in the house, finally snapped. "That's it," he muttered, tossing aside his blanket and grabbing a flashlight. "If she wants something out there, we're going to see what it is." Emily sat up on the couch. "James, wait. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe she's just confused." He hesitated. So did she. But Lexi was already at the door, tail still, eyes locked on that place in the woods, and something in her stare, something deep and almost human, made Emily's stomach turn. So, just past midnight, under a sky heavy with stars and silence, the three of them stepped into the woods. James led with the flashlight. Emily followed close behind, and Lexi moved ahead with a quiet urgency, as though she had waited years for this exact moment. They didn't yet know that what waited among the trees would change everything. Lexi moved ahead with certainty, her steps quick but deliberate, as if following a trail no human could see. The forest was quiet, unnervingly so. No chirping insects, no rustling leaves, just the crunch of boots on dry soil and the rhythmic panting of a dog on a mission. They followed her deeper than they'd ever dared to explore before. James's flashlight danced across branches, casting fleeting shadows that twisted and vanished with every step. The deeper they went, the heavier the air felt. Not colder, but stiller, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Nearly half a mile in, Lexi stopped. She stood at the base of an old oak tree, massive, gnarled, its roots breaking through the earth like veins under pale skin. Without hesitation, she began to dig. Her paws moved with a kind of frantic purpose, scattering dirt and leaves in every direction. James stepped forward to pull her back, but something made him pause. The sound of her claws struck something solid. He knelt down, brushing away soil with his hands. The flashlight caught the edge of metal, dull, weather-worn, hidden beneath years of forest growth. A handle. A latch. James looked back at Emily, who knelt beside him without a word. Together they pulled it free. It was a tin box, tightly wrapped in aged plastic. Time had curled the edges, but the seal held. With a sharp tug, James opened the lid. Inside were small, time-worn objects. A red toy car missing one wheel, a faded plastic dinosaur, a drawing on lined paper, a stick-figure family beneath a crooked roof. And then, folded beneath the drawing, a note. Written in uneven, trembling letters, the paper read, "If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it out. My name is Tommy. Please don't let him come back. He hurt me. He said I don't matter." Emily's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes stayed fixed on the words as her hand instinctively gripped James's. James didn't speak. He reached further into the box and unfolded a brittle newspaper clipping, its edges browned with age. The headline jumped out at him, "Boy missing, presumed dead, no leads." A photo accompanied the article, a pale, solemn boy with light blonde hair and wide, uncertain eyes. The name beneath the image made James's hands tremble. Thomas Pierce. Silence swallowed the space around them. James swayed slightly as if the ground had shifted under him. That's my brother," he said hoarsely. "I thought he ran away. That's what I was told. I was 9. I asked, and they said he'd left. They said he didn't want to stay." Emily looked at him, really looked, and in his expression she saw the flicker of recognition turn into a storm. Pieces started falling into place. Forgotten arguments, slammed doors, his father's angry voice saying things a child should never hear. "He's not like you. He was never mine." James staggered back a step. "I didn't remember," he whispered. "I didn't want to remember." The realization didn't come like thunder. It crept in like rising water, slow but unstoppable. His brother hadn't disappeared. He had been erased. Lexi stood quietly beside the box, as if she'd known all along what needed to be uncovered, as if this was what she'd been waiting for someone to see. James closed the box and looked to Emily. "We have to call the police." There was no panic in his voice, only a quiet fury, not loud, not explosive, but rooted. It was the kind of anger that comes when truth finally claws its way to the surface, when silence no longer protects the past. As Emily pulled out her phone with shaking hands, James stood still, staring at the woods. He no longer saw trees. He saw answers, and he wasn't going to let them stay buried. The investigation that followed was slow and methodical, peeling back years of silence and forgotten files like layers of dust in a long abandoned room. The site near the oak tree was examined with care and precision. Forensic teams confirmed what James and Emily had already accepted in their hearts. The remains were human, and they belonged to Thomas Pierce. The evidence spoke clearly. The box of belongings, the note scrawled by a frightened child, and the forgotten newspaper clipping were pieces of a truth no longer willing to stay buried. Together, they told the story of a boy who had wanted only to be seen, to be safe, to be loved, and of the man who had tried to make him disappear. James's father, living under an assumed name in a small town across the Canadian border, was located within weeks. He did not resist arrest. There was no outburst, no denial. He simply nodded when the officers arrived. James later told the detective, "He was always planning to vanish. He just never imagined anyone would come looking." Through every step of the process, interviews, legal procedures, media attention, Emily stood beside James. What they had uncovered was painful, yes, but it also gave them something neither had dared hope for in a long time: direction, purpose. In exposing the truth, they had freed not only Thomas's memory, but themselves from the weight of silence. They held a small memorial in the woods near the place where Lexi had stopped that night. Not with ceremony or crowd, but with sincerity. A simple wooden marker, a name carved gently into the grain. Thomas Pierce, always remembered. They didn't stand in mourning. They stood in promise. That no child's story should end in silence. That even years later, the truth can still find its voice. And then, almost quietly, life began to return. 6 months after that cold night in the forest, Emily gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Thomas, not in sorrow, but in tribute, in hope, in continuation. Their home, once filled with silence and unanswered questions, began to feel warm again. Not perfect, not without scars, but real, alive. As for Lexi, the old shepherd who had refused to look away, she never returned to the door after that night. Her mission, whatever instinct had driven her, was complete. Every evening now she would curl up at the foot of James and Emily's bed, breathing slow, steady, and at peace. She had been the first to see what no one else could, and when the truth finally came into the light, she knew her watch was over.